Hi and welcome. We are excited that you guys could join us today. Today is day 4 of AAIC, which is the Alzheimer's Association International Conference. And as many of you know, it's a very special year because we're virtual this year, which means that everyone in the whole world can attend if they wanted to. This year, we've had 31,000 registrants from over 157 countries. 31,000. I wanted to make sure I read that right. Yeah. So if you missed it on Monday, you can check out our Facebook Live about everything that happened on Monday. But today we're going to talk about what's happened since Monday. So I'm here with Claire Day, our Chief Program Officer. Now, Claire, I know you've been keeping up on all the AAIC fun things that have been happening and information that's been coming out. I heard that on Tuesday, they talked about biomarkers and that there's something going on with a blood test related to dementia.
Yeah, well, Jenny, so great to be here and bring another update for AAIC to our Facebook fans here. And I think Tuesday was the big day. We got a lot of exciting buzz, I would say, is a good way to describe it, around these biomarker tests. And so a biomarker is that biological marker. So in this particular case, they were talking about blood. And if you think about when you go to a doctor's office and you have to do a blood draw, they can detect your cholesterol level, and they can use different biological markers within your body, things that are made up of you, that can tell about disease. And we've never had one of these that has been used in a clinical setting related to Alzheimer's. And what we learned on Tuesday is that we're one step closer again to seeing this actually be a valuable asset in two ways. I like to kind of think of it in two ways. One is that eventually down the road, wouldn't it be great if there was a non-invasive, simple test that could definitively tell someone whether or not that they had Alzheimer's today? When there's an effective treatment, wouldn't it be great if there was a test that could tell us that you might get the disease down the road, or you will get the disease down the road before you're showing symptoms? But when you think about clinical research and how these biomarkers are being used today, that's an even just as exciting, right? Because what that means is that we're now using biomarkers, these blood tests, in clinical settings, or in clinical research, to actually make sure that the intended therapeutic target is being given to the right patient. So if you think about 5 or 10 years ago, some of these earlier studies that were still using the traditional methods of diagnosing, like a history and physical, and using brain scans to look for stroke or brain tumors, like things that could be ruling out, right, whether or not they had Alzheimer's. That's how we diagnose today. If they were given a drug to target amyloid, and we have no way to prove whether or not they have amyloid in the brain, it really is going to advance the clinical trials in such a big way. So it's still a little bit early. It's not going to be something that you can go into your doctor's office tomorrow and get a blood test for, but it is very exciting, and they really are changing the game of how we look at both clinical research as well as, hopefully down the road, we look at clinical practice. So it was a big day on Tuesday.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. And that would be so fantastic to just be able to, if one day, go into your doctor's office and say, hey, can I get the blood test? And then they'd be able to just draw some blood. It takes, like 24 hours in the lab or whatever. And suddenly, boom, now you know.
Yeah, and it's really important that you mention that fact, right? Because that sounds simple enough to you and me, but the way that they draw that blood, people have asked me, well, why is it going to take so long before this can be used in a clinical setting? The way they draw that blood, how they store it, in what container they store it, at what temperature they store it, that all has to be standardized and looked at to make sure that the test is effective, right? So in clinical trials, the way they're doing it now, they can perfect that, they can maintain that. So that's a big part of why the way we draw the blood is the next sort of phase of how we test for this to get us to that next step.
Wow, I wouldn't have even thought about like the temperature, the vial, or
I know.
Wow. So many. I'm glad that there are researchers out there working on this and that I'm not. I
Yeah.
couldn't do that. So now I know that you got up this morning at 5 a.m. because you were that excited about catching some researchers this morning. And I also know that there is a local researcher from UC Davis. What is going on? Like, what else has been happening at AAIC? Because I know that there's just so many new research like opportunities out there.
Yes, I did get up this morning. I got to watch the live Worldwide Fingers study this morning, which is the worldwide initiative that's looking at lifestyle interventions. We can talk about that in a little bit, but I think some of the exciting things that have happened over the last couple of days, certainly we've seen a lot of work come out looking at diversity, looking at the Latinx and white risk factors associated with the APOE4 gene. We're learning more and more about how that gene that we identify as a risk factor doesn't have the same risk for everybody, depending on whether you're white, African American, or Latino. And so we started to see some studies come out about that. Dr. Barnes had a session this morning on how on underrepresented populations. So she focused on African Americans, whereas Jason Flatt from the University of Nevada in Las Vegas, formerly a California researcher, showed us some of his work on the LGBTQ community. And then we also saw some exciting things come out. And I say exciting because it's educational and it's going to move us forward, that look at risk factors, but are looking at them at an earlier age. So we've sort of had this focus on brain health as we get older, but now there's some data that's showing us that those cardiovascular risk factors, especially, that are being seen in people in their 20s, even in our teens and 20s, can have a real impact on increasing your risk of developing dementia. So in this particular study, they looked at a group of more than 700 African Americans that had, excuse me for just a second. I'm so sorry, I could feel that coming on, and this is live TV, Jenny. This is what happens on live TV. That looked at those that had diabetes, high blood pressure, or 2 or more heart health risks in adolescence and young adulthood, had significantly worse late life cognition. And so we've been talking about that a lot at the Alzheimer's Association through the US Pointer study. That's a lifestyle intervention study that is looking to identify whether or not all of those cardiovascular risks, like good diet and exercise, those cognitive and social exercises, stimulation, as well as health monitoring, making sure that you're not at risk for developing high blood pressure or diabetes, are so important to healthy aging. And so the US Pointer study is actually going to look at that and determine whether or not this sort of lifestyle modifications can have an impact on reducing our risk of developing dementia. Right. And we've known for some time, right, that what's good for your heart is good for your brain.
Right. I mean, so I don't know if you know this, but I'm not 20, and I'm a little older than 20. So there's still, like there's still things that I can do right now, right? So, I mean, because obviously I've passed the 20 age marker to watch it back when I was younger.
Last year.
Yes, exactly. Last year. I mean, so it's only been a year.
Well, I think what this is teaching us really, and what we've learned over the years, is that it's a couple of things. One is that while we are still looking for a target, right, we want a therapeutic intervention that's going to either stop the progression of the disease or stop people from even getting cognitive symptoms down the road. We also think it's going to be a combination, right, of these lifestyle interventions. We learned this from the great work of Dr. Mia Chiapolta from the finger study years ago, when she sort of laid this groundwork for what is now becoming worldwide fingers being done in countries across the globe to test the same thing we are in US Pointer. But I think what we're learning is it's never too late. And there's always a chance for us to sort of right that ship a little bit and start really thinking about what it means to lead a brain healthy lifestyle.
Very true. Was there anything else that was exciting at AAIC? Not that this wasn't enough, but.
No. So there were some good things that came out that talked about, that are looking at COVID-19. I think the world is talking still about COVID-19, even when we have the largest international conference probably of our time this year, that I don't know that we'll ever be able to break these records. It's early research, and it's actually pushing the Alzheimer's Association to invest in future research around a brain study that's looking at the SARS-CoV impact on behavior and cognition in people with dementia.
Wow, that's great. I'm glad that we're able to, like pivot, or, I hate to use that word because everyone's using it, but the researchers were able to jump onto, the COVID, like, oh, this is COVID here. We have this opportunity, like, let's study it right now. And that there was enough evidence or things of importance to discuss at AAIC.
Yeah, and I think it's all really early. And we heard from one of our scientists at our home office, Dr. Carl Hill, this week, and he reminded us, COVID itself is a novel virus. So anything we're learning about its impact on dementia is also very new, very young, and in a way subject to change, right? Because as we're learning more about the virus itself, it's going to impact what we learn about how it impacts other things. I think the other thing that was really good to hear was the further results of the second aim of the IDEAS trial. Now, Jenny, you might remember me talking about the IDEAS trial before. And the IDEAS trial is a trial that has been funded by not only the Alzheimer's Association, but the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to look at Medicare beneficiaries and how getting a PET scan to clinically diagnose a case of dementia could do two things. The first aim was to hope that it would improve health outcomes. The second aim was looking at how it could reduce cost. And this was a trial that went over across the country, 11,000 participants. And last year they reported out those early signs of the aim one on improving health outcomes met its endpoint, and people were it sort of significantly changed their medical management when they had not only had the scan to confirm, but they got the results of that scan. We talk a lot about early detection and diagnosis and how 50% of people living with the disease have never been clinically or formally diagnosed. And we need to change that. People need to know what it is that is happening with them. And so that was reported last year and probably even the year before at AAIC. Well, this year we were able to see the results of the second aim, which was to determine if the amyloid PET scan could result in a 12-month reduction of hospitalizations and emergency visits within the population compared to those that were sort of in the control group that sort of didn't have that scan. And so it was determined that it didn't statistically meet its endpoint, but what we did see was that an amyloid PET was associated with a 4.5% relative reduction in hospitalizations compared to the endpoint, or compared to the control group. So while it didn't statistically meet that endpoint of both hospitalizations and ER visits, we did see reduction in the result of getting of hospitalizations, which is important. And having the result of that scan, rather than just the mere act of having the scan, was strongly associated with health outcomes, including hospitalizations and emergency department visits. So while it certainly didn't meet all of the endpoints that it was intended to do, I think we got some important information about the power that an accurate and timely diagnosis can have on controlling one's own sort of health destiny in a way. And what they're going to do is continue some of this work through an extension of the study called New Ideas. That will also include a higher number of people in diverse communities, as well as people younger than 65. This was an original study that was done for people who were on Medicare, so typically over the age of 65. So those were just a few of the things that kind of really caught my eye. There's so much great research going on, and so much that, you know, we can't all keep up with it. But, you know, I don't know if you've checked out the Alzheimer's Association Science Hub app. Do you have that on your phone?
No, I don't have that on my phone yet.
Jenny.
I know.
This app, and you can get this free app at the Google, in either Google Play or on iTunes. And that's really going to be a great place for people to go if they're interested in science and interested in more of this information that will give you sort of the up to the minute information on what's happening within the science community. And what's also great about it is that it will have the Alzheimer's Association viewpoints. People will often read these studies on the internet and assume that the headline, which is usually always catchy, right, to get you to click on it, has really good detailed information. And so we'll be the first to announce when there's really great detailed information that actually has science and evidence behind it. And so that gives you that perspective. So
on the app, is it going to be, so I'm no scientist, and a lot of times scientists speak way above my level because they're so smart. But so if I download the app and I want to know about it, is it going to be in science?
No.
Or okay.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's going to be in language that everybody can understand. It's designed for the general public.
Oh, great.
So we have lots of Alzheimer's Association programs and journals for scientists. This is for the general public to engage and learn about facts and evidence related to Alzheimer's disease and related disorder, related dementia science.
Oh, perfect. That's such a, like, sounds like such a great tool, and I should definitely get on downloading that. So now I know that a lot of the donations that people make to the association, know that those donations go to support families. But what a lot of people may not know is that it also goes to support research. But that's not the only place that the Alzheimer's Association helps support research. We also have advocates that advocate in their local communities and within their states and nationally to talk to their representatives to get like NIH funding that will also go towards research. So how is research supported in our area?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. And Alzheimer's and related dementias is a team sport, right? We say that all the time. Caregivers can't do it alone. Professionals can't do it alone. Scientists can't do it alone. And the same is true for how we create some of the work that goes into supporting research, as well as the different avenues that we take to get there. So certainly through things like the walk and the longest day, we always talk about how those events are the walk, especially the Walk to End Alzheimer's is the largest advocacy and research event and that you could participate in, and supporting those things. But it also goes to support people living in our community and communities around the country through our 24/7 helpline, through support groups, through education, all of those services of which have been converted online so that people can still participate in them while we're living in this this new world right now. But I think the point you make about the advocates is really an important one. And so our advocates help us to get that research funding every year across the finish line. And it's the amazing work that our advocates do to ensure that that annual donation, that annual designation through the National Institute on Health that supports Alzheimer's specific or dementia specific research grows every year. And that largest growth really dates back to that 2011 to when we created the National Alzheimer's Project Act, that was signed into law by President Obama in 2011. And if you've ever seen that advocacy graph that we have that talks about the designation and funding for research at the NIH, it progressively goes up after that year, with the exception of one little hiccup there. And that's because advocates are relentless, and they're not letting up at letting their members of Congress know that Alzheimer's disease and dementia need to be a priority when it comes to ending this disease. And so there's so many of the studies that have been funded through this funding, that have been funded in cooperation with the Alzheimer's Association and this NIH funding. And also we have some amazing research supporters who like to fund this type of unique work that can be happening. We've certainly seen that through Part the Cloud, where they are really looking at different areas of research to make sure that no stone is left unturned. So it really is a team sport when it comes to getting us to the end here.
Perfect. Wow. Thanks so much, Claire. So tomorrow, it sounds like, is going to be another great day for AAIC. It's going to be a professional development day, and it's actually one of the best days of the week if you wanted to have an opportunity to ask your questions directly to the researchers. And as we mentioned earlier, AAIC is free this year. It's because it's virtual. And so you can go right now to alz.org/AAIC and sign up. And the best part is that even though you might be signing up today and it's almost done, you can still have access to all of the recordings and sessions from this whole week. And you'll have access to them for 30 days, I believe, past the last day, which is tomorrow. So we hope you sign up. Once again, that's alz.org/AAIC. Thank you so much, Claire, for talking with us today. And thanks everyone so much for watching.